Hi, good evening and welcome. This is Pain to Power, and I am your host, Maria Cosme, also known as Brown Girl Interrupting. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you haven't done it yet, please make sure you subscribe, hit the like button and the bell. And as we are talking today, and when I bring my guests on, please make sure that you are engaging in the comment. If you're here, throw a like, throw a heart, throw something. Let us know you are here so we can engage with you and ask questions. So when I began Pain to Power in 2022, which is over 100 episodes ago, the first guests that I had were relationship guides, because it happened to be that Pain to Power came to fruition at a time when my heart had been shattered by the first real relationship I had since after my 17-year marriage. And my mind was in that space of needing some healing. And it showed because lots of people were receptive and watching. A lot of people needed that. So I think about this in terms of the ideas everything happens for a reason. And today's episode is coming at a time when, again, I am in a space right now of not trusting in love and people in my own heart. And it's been a really heavy 2025 for me in that space. But this time, what I've realized is that it's not about getting answers from relationship guides. It's really about self-love and how healing is in these depths that we don't even realize inside ourselves. So this episode is timely for not just for me, but also for many, because this healing is more than just when we're talking about self-love, that self-love is also about healing those things around us. And right now, more than just love and relationships, we are in dire need of healing. We are in dire need of connection, of humanity. There is just so much hurting our hearts, hurting our souls. And I know that we are all in this space where right now we don't know what we can do, what we should be doing. So I offer you today as just a space to be with me and my guest, Jasmine Clemente, who I'm going to introduce in just a few moments, to connect with us and start thinking about how does healing take you to where we need to. So I'm very excited to introduce my guest tonight, who was actually brought into my life in a very unexpected way. Again, everything happens for a reason. Through a mutual friend, both of us were unaware of each other until Victorious DaCosta, the filmmaker, connected us. So thanks and shout out to Victorious if you're in the chat. And but what it also brought me to is this week, I read a post by my guest, Jasmine Clemente, called Are Certain People, Places, and Objects Spiritual Portals? And this is a quote from it that really stood with me in terms of connections and how things unfold in life. People can be portals. Have you ever heard the saying, sometimes all it takes is one person to change your life? For better or worse, it's true. Some people have the ability to open the doors of opportunity for you, while others cause nothing but chaos. Isn't it interesting when we start viewing everything as energy? And to take it up a notch, energy is one thing, but portals are another. It's like a spiritual wormhole or tunnel that brings you into a different dimension. So tonight, this conversation and moment was fated. And as you have come to this show in this moment, whether it's a rebroadcast or right now live, it's fated because you're going to be taking something away from us, from this energy, from a healing space. So tonight, I'm very excited to offer and bring to the stage a spiritual teacher, the best-selling author, and the owner of her own publishing company, JC Publishing, Jasmine Clemente. There's just something about the energy of this woman that I am so excited to introduce you to. Welcome, Jasmine.
Thank you for having me on. And yeah, so it is definitely, well, it's the snowiest day of the year. It's the coldest day of the year. And you're right, we are in need of warmth, like human warmth and connection and love. You are absolutely 1000% correct. It's true. Thank you for having me on. I hope that I can shed some light in any way possible. Like I really, really do.
Thank you for coming and being here and sharing your light and your stories and all of your knowledge and wisdom. I think that's come along this way, right? And we're definitely going to be start unpacking that. And I think I just saw in the comment, happy snowversary. Yes, right? It is, right? I love that. And yes, it is snowing outside and it's cold. So we're warming everybody up today with our conversation. Whenever I invite my guests over Jasmine, I always want to know the personal relationship that each person has with this idea of turning pain into power. So,
Mm.
when you think about that, what has that meant for you?
Wow. I think it is a remembering of who we really are. As I'll tell everyone now, since you're just meeting me, I am a very spiritual person, not religious, but I'm spiritual, and I do take bits from different religions. One thing that I always, one of my favorite scriptures is, although we live in the world, we are not of the world. So because I believe that we're not of the world, it is a breaking down of some of the things that we absorbed in the world, some of the horrors, tragedies, abuse, toxicities, things that we weren't supposed to learn and we have to unlearn. And as we unlearn it, our pain can turn into power because we start remembering who we are spiritually, that we are not of this world. We are powerful beings and we are unlimited, really. We're very, very powerful. And I think we don't even realize how powerful we are.
Ooh, I love that and the power behind that, and I just to say, like and I know you and I have talked about this before, but there's so much alignment to the work that we do, everything
Yes,
you've
there is.
named, right? That remembering and unlearning is all part of the framework that I've created with Return in my course, and definitely something that is so important in turning our pain into our power, and I really appreciate that you talk about this idea that we are not of this world. And that's a big piece. So as we think about that, tell me a little bit about your spiritual journey of how you've come to this place of recognizing such a profound idea and how it impacts the way you move and you guide others to move through the world.
Love it. Okay, so for some of you who may not know, my background is actually in house music. So before I started writing books and before I became yoga certified and got really deep into spirituality, my first original big dream was to be a singer, but not just any singer, like a tribal house music singer, right? And it's a very spiritual genre. So the music in house music is a lot of gospel singers usually, and that's church. And again, I am, like I said, I'm not religious. I'm not like pigeonholed into only Christianity or anything like that, but it is a spiritual genre. So, but as I was making it in the house music industry, and I did release some records. If you Google me, you'll see that I'm on Nervous Records and some other labels in the house music industry. As I was moving through that industry, there were some things. It's the entertainment industry, so there's egos, of course, and there's competition, and all those things. Now I got into a relationship with a guy who was a b-boy dancer, really great dancer. I mean, I'm talking like he was amazing, but he was abusive. And so my spiritual journey really started before we met. I was already spiritual because I loved house music, and to me it was a spiritual genre of music. But when I got into a relationship with him and he became physically abusive, which started as verbal abuse, he did drugs, and a lot of DJs and producers, unfortunately, did drugs. They did coke and a lot of those things. It was just given to you. Um, so the abuse went from being verbal to then being physical. And then when I left him, that's when I really got into the spiritual journey, because I was like, okay, I need a hiatus. I need to leave the entertainment industry, not just because I was in an abusive relationship with this one man, but the drugs that were around it, the competition that was around it, and all these things. I was just like, I need a hiatus. And so I started traveling a bit, and not anywhere crazy, but like I went to Sedona, Arizona, which is beautiful. There were Red Rock Mountains there. Sedona is like this place that is spiritually charged with all types of people from every religion. Like people go there who believe in aliens. They're like, I believe in a higher power. I don't know what it is, but it's something, right? So you'll see people going there that are into Buddhism, that are into this, that, and the third, all these yoga teachers, all these Reiki masters, like you shamans, everything, you name it, right? So I went there. I went upstate New York and I stayed at an ashram, and I did these things, and I started to, kind of just move away from the music. Even though the music is very healing and it's very loving, the industry was like kind of chaotic, and I needed to just be still and quiet and come back into my intuition. I had to heal. And also my ex, who was abusive, ended up passing away. He ended up dying. And so I mourned his death. So it was a weird, like, he hurt me, but there was also this mourning because I really, really wanted him to change and get help, go to AA, go to rehab, find out all, just like heal. And it was a big lesson for me where I had to accept the fact that we can't save everyone. We can't help everyone, although we can, but there's only so much we can do. Like, we can help people, but they have to want the help. They have to be ready for the help. And we're not responsible for everyone's story and how they were wounded, right? Because their story is their story. Our story is our story. And I did a lot of like inward work, because for me to even get into that relationship in the first place had a lot to do with my childhood and what I was willing to accept. Because the truth is that before he became physically abusive with me, he was verbally abusive, and I tolerated the verbal abuse. And I'm in a place today in my life, which is more than over a decade later, where I don't even tolerate verbal abuse. Like, the minute you call me out my name, I'm like done. But back then, if it was verbal abuse, I would be like, oh, he just has a bad temper. I didn't think he was going to ever put his hands on me, but I was willing to accept the verbal abuse because of my childhood and what was normalized growing up. So, long loaded answer. but yeah, so there's a lot there. And then that's when I wrote the first book, Living in the Light. And then we'll get into that.
You unlock so many layers there, though, right? Like that moment. And I think so many people get to that point. There's this pivotal moment of pain that just pushes you to want something different. You don't know what it is, but you know you want something different. And you went on this journey so intentionally, and found the pieces to reclaim your story, which, by the way, kudos to you. To reclaim a story after pain like that, after being broken down, after having patterns of having it in your life before, is a huge accomplishment, and not an easy one. Speaking from experience, right? It's not an easy one, so that's huge. When you were in that spiritual space of going to these places, did you yourself see yourself as a guide, or you were really just a learner? Or what was the moment where you started to see yourself as also one that held the power to push more out than just absorb in?
That's a great question. I think I was going through a period where I was becoming the learner. So I think I'll give an example. You know how they say at every level is a new devil? So I think at one point I was a
I've
teacher.
never heard that, but I love it, and I'm writing it
Oh,
down.
okay, well, we heard it today. So I was a spiritual teacher, and then something happened to me which made me realize, then I was a student. So as within, so without, as above, so below. You can be a teacher and a student at the same time. And as I'm growing to the next level, there was something in me that I needed to learn and absorb. So I was able to go, okay, right now it's a timeout. Right now it's time for me to learn now. So as I was mourning the death of my ex-boyfriend, because regardless of how, because yeah, of course, he could have killed me. It could have been the other way, right? He could have killed me even by accident, because, he was the type of person that, and again, every single person is different. Some abusers are worse than others. The guy that I was with, I really, truly, honestly feel that he had a mental disorder. Something was definitely not right up there, because there were times when he was the most beautiful person with a really big heart and everybody loved him. He was fun. He was exciting. He would go out of his way to help people. Like, he was a person that if somebody was in trouble, he will go out of his way to help you. So a person like that, you wouldn't think is going to be beating up his girlfriend, right? And ex-girlfriends, by the way, because I found out that he did this to other women before me, but nobody ever said anything. I was the first one to actually come out and say something. And it was probably because I was also a popular artist and I had a following and a voice. So I came out and said something. And then other women were like, that happened to me too. And then his brother said that it happened to his ex. He did it with his ex-girlfriend as well. So he had an issue, but nobody would have thought he had that side to him because he was very funny and outgoing and exciting. And he was there for other people when they had a problem. So if there was an issue, he would jump in and protect somebody else. So it's almost like a Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. It's like, wait, how can this person that's so nice also have this other side? that's so bad. So I think something wasn't right up there. And that's part of the reason why I wanted him to go to a hospital, see a therapist, get on medication, something, right? So, and when you're in a close relationship with someone, you know that person better than anybody else does because you, well, depends, but you're closer to that person than other people who only see them at the club or at the party. You know,
Mhm.
the degree of uh of how close they are to that person, the proximity is not as close. So they see things at a glimpse and they might go, oh, he's the nicest guy in the world, he's so much fun. Yeah, because you probably see him only at a club scene when everyone's dancing and partying and having a good time. You don't see him in those intimate scenes when nobody's watching, and you know what I mean, all those things. So when he passed away, I was also mourning this like I wish I could have saved him. You know, I could have done more. How come his family didn't help him? Why did so many people give him drugs for free? Like I was actually mad when I went to the funeral. I remember being upset at some of the people that were there, and I didn't say anything out of respect, but there was a part of me that was enraged. And I'm like, why are you at his funeral when you gave him so many drugs? Like I wanted to say that to people there, but I did it. And I'm like, you used to give him coke for free. Like here, snort it up, snort it up. And now you're here at his funeral mourning him, crying, but you
You were
gave
the
him drugs.
enabler,
You
right?
gave him drugs, right?
Mhm.
So in any case, so there was this mourning as well, and it's weird because you would think if somebody was uh was abusive to you, how in that same breath could you be mad at someone but also still care about them at the same time and wish they had healing, right? So I went through this really cathartic kind of time where I needed a timeout. I needed to cry, I needed to mourn, I needed to get all these feelings out. And I used to see little signs and synchronicities, and one of the biggest ones was that I was at an ashram and I was outside and I saw a little caterpillar and it was just moving on the rocks. It was this cute little caterpillar, and I was fascinated. And I thought to myself, that's me right now. Like, I'm not the butterfly yet. I
Mm.
thought I was the butterfly because I had records out and I was singing in the nightclubs, you know, for all these strangers. And I had reached a dream that I had. I wanted to become a singer, and I reached that goal. And I worked with a lot of talented producers, and Victorious was one of them. He shot one of my music videos. So I met some really amazing people, but I still had a lot to learn. You know, oh wow. I wasn't expecting that. So, you know, I had a lot to learn. And the little caterpillar, I was like, that's me. I'm still wiggling around. I'm still a baby. Spiritually, I'm still a baby. And I still have a lot to learn. You know, so success does not mean you're an adult or that you made it. Yeah, to some level, of course, but there's a spiritual maturity that I think is real success. To me,
Mm.
peace is really the new success. It really is. You know, I think having peace of mind and peace in your spirit is to me like priceless.
I love that. And it looks like Victorious was in here. Peace to Merciful V. Yes, I love that. I definitely, I've never heard that one before. Every level is a new devil, right? That was a new one for me too. But so poignant and true, right? And peace, Mr. Jones. What's up? What's going on, y'all? Well, I love that. Thank you. And thank you so much for our Renters fam for showing up. So I, one, I feel there's so much in that story of narcissistic behavior, in that outward behavior to others, and then the internal relationship with you, right? But you're what a humbling way to see yourself, to see the caterpillar, to see yourself through that. And I think that is such a open way also to exist in life, is to recognize that we're constantly learning and evolving in our journey. And with that, I titled the show "Journey to the Soul," to your soul. Right? When you think about that, how has that been part of this for you? This journey to your soul,
When I think of what the caterpillar,
or
or
just your journey itself, right? Like, in all the layers of things that you've uncovered through your spirituality, through the books that you've written, right? Like, how is this all a journey to your soul?
it comes back to loving myself. And, you know, the other thing too is I know we're not of this world and there's a remembering of who we really are, but we came to this world for a reason too. So there's definitely changes that are going to happen to my soul and my spirit through the experience that I'm having in this lifetime. So I do feel like I'm evolving And so I'm a student and I'm learning. And every time I think that I know a lot or I have learned a valuable lesson and I'm becoming more mature from that lesson, I'm like, okay, what's next? What's around the corner? Like I'm getting to that point.
Mm,
Not because
mm.
I think that it's like, just stress is, it's not that. It's just that we don't know everything, and I know that I came here for a reason. I came here to learn something.
Absolutely. And yeah, there's constantly
Mhm.
layers to unlock about ourselves, and I love this. This is from your website, Knowing Others is a Wisdom, Knowing Yourself is Enlightenment. And that is a powerful way to think about things. So let's talk about this self-love because your book, More Than One Soulmate, is what we're gonna get into. But before we get to your book, I really wanna know what was coming up for you that led you to this book? Because you talked a little bit about your first book, but what was the experience that started stirring in you where you started to recognize that this was the book that needed to come?
Because so the last relationship was physically abusive, and then the other men that I dated after him were not physically abusive, but it was like my barometer should have been up here, I guess, right?
Mhm.
Standards, if you will. And so if I dated someone else, I'd be like, oh, this is so much better than the last relationship.
Mm.
Even though it was better, there was still things that were like, and so then I'm like, all right, so then I get pickier, I guess you would say, or choosier. And then I date someone who's even better. And like, oh, this is much better, right? But I was still down here somewhere. So I think I got to a place where I felt a little lost, to be honest. And I had a lot of people in my ear, especially women, mostly women, not really so much men, but a lot of females like, when are you going to get married? When are you going to find someone? And some of it came from a genuine place of, they wanted me to have a companion and be loved, and because they were in relationships and they wanted me to know
Mhm.
what that feels like. But there was also this tone. And a lot of it was of like, you're a woman, that's what you're supposed to do. Like you're supposed to
Mm.
have a man, like you're supposed to be in a relationship, and don't wait till you get older. It's going to be harder as you're older. Like in other movies,
Mm.
that as you get older and your looks change or you're not fertile anymore to have children, then like real love is not possible. So you're on a clock to like rush. And that rush was part of the reason I got into a relationship with the first one who physically abused me, because at the time, I thought, okay, I'm 30, right? And I'm like, I need to get into a serious relationship now because I'm 30 years old. And so I got into a relationship with a person that, even though I saw some signs like the verbal abuse, I was like, well, no one's perfect. That was my no one's perfect. So if I
Mhm.
want this to work, I have to stay with him because he's human and he has flaws and everybody has flaws. So I accepted it and got myself into a relationship that was traumatic, to be honest. And even though my other relationships weren't as traumatic, they were still abusive in different ways, like maybe more milder, but it was still abusive. So I came to a place where I was like, I need to write a book about these different people who come into our life, these different relationships that we have. And that through these relationships, they teach us something about ourselves, because we didn't attract those relationships for nothing. Like, what was it in me that chose
Mm.
date this person, to like this person, to stay with this person, right? So, and in a way, yes, they can be a soulmate. A soulmate doesn't have to be forever. A soulmate can be a temporary season where they're in your life to show you something about yourself. And vice versa, you may show them something back. They learn from you, you learn from them. But really, the ultimate goal, I feel, is to not only have the self-love, but a big, big thing that I want people to take away, whoever's listening, is that your cup should not only be full, but it should be overflowing. So, and I forget who said this. Oh my God, I think her name is Nicholas. Oh my God, what's her name? I'll remember later, I know it. But she says, let people take from your overflow.
Mm.
So in other words, when they feel like their cup is full and they're like, oh, I'm in such a great place, and now they want to help. Well, if you've been in a great place for like 1 month or maybe 3 months, that doesn't necessarily mean you're in a place to help and give. Because if you're only at 99 or 100% and you're giving, you're going to want something back in return so you can recoup that 10%, 5%, or 3% that you gave out to come back in. And so this becomes this battle of give and take, where when your cup is overflowing, which is what it should be, and overflowing means that you've been in a good place, not for just a couple of months, but maybe maybe a couple of years, where this is now
Mhm.
your lifestyle, and you know that your habits have completely changed and you are an overflowing, abundant person. You know what I mean? And you're just like, trauma, what's that? Like, really, you really come to
Mm. Mhm.
where trauma's off the map. Like, you literally have
It's
really,
like an internalization of it, right? There's difference than just knowing than to internalize it, to have it be a part of your soul and your being and your makeup.
right. And I feel like women, especially, and men have their thing too. So don't get me wrong. I know, but women, I feel like it's so like our culture, any culture, I don't care what race or ethnicity or religion you are, women are expected in so many cultures to get married by a young age, a younger age than men. And it's like our value is seen by who we're with, and we make so many bad choices getting
Mm.
into relationships with guys that maybe they're great, they're humans, everybody's good on the inside, we're all made from the light, and but maybe they're not healed yet, so you got two unhealed people trying to save each other.
And we're pushing ourselves into places where we sacrifice ourselves, right? Like that's the thing. Like you sacrifice parts of yourself when you're making a decision based on other people's expectations or a timeline. It's a
Right.
guarantee that that's where we're going to make the wrong decisions. And then we lose ourselves, right? So to your point, it is coming back to remembering who you are, right? Like that's such a powerful thing and so important. And I love that idea of the overflow. How rarely we say that is, because it is, right? Like my cup is full.
Lisa Nichols is her name. Okay, go on.
Lisa Nichols. Okay, well, I'm gonna look that up. Lisa Nichols. I love that because I I think that is then what constantly depletes us. So we are as women and maybe men too. Like I think people, right? People are in this place where we think we've filled up enough and we deplete and we quickly deplete and we're constantly going through this cycle. And it reminds me of the idea of cycle of socialization and the idea that we are socialized into certain patterns and behaviors. So with that, when you're thinking about your journey, because you said what you started to learn was what were you doing to
Mhm.
bring these men in and to stay in these relationships. So when you think about that and your own socialization and how you grew up and the messages you got about love, about relationships, what were some of those things that you were unlearned, like starting to discover, and how did they tie back to your upbringing?
Love it. So one of them was, I realized that when I was into music, right, that was something I wanted to do. I loved singing. And I said, when I took a hiatus from the music industry, it was because I was in an abusive relationship with someone. And then I never really fully got back into music the way I did the first time around. Like, I dabbled with it, but it was never really the same because there was like a mojo that was like leaked out of me from that relationship. And I thought that when you talk about sacrifice and stuff, and it's true, it's like another thing I noticed was that a lot of men who were like DJs or producers and they were pretty successful, a lot of them had girlfriends that were not in the industry, and they were faithful and loyal and this and that. But if you were a woman in the industry and you were really trying to become very successful, either as an actress or a singer or even a DJ or whatever, and you had a boyfriend or a man, more times than likely that guy would leave you if you were just unavailable and really successful because you were busy and prosperous and productive. But the other way around, if it was a man who was hardly home because he's on tour, he's going to be away, he's at the studio late at night, he may not be home until the next day because he's in the studio recording. His woman will stay with him more than a man who would stay with a woman who's at the studio recording all night, who won't be home until the morning.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah,
I had guys that I would date that would be
many
like,
double standards.
that wife kind of thing, because I don't know what time you're coming home, and you went to that industry party, what time you're coming back? I don't know what time I'm coming back because I'll be mingling with so and so, and if we want to like go out to breakfast at 5 a.m, I know it doesn't sound traditional, but that's how the industry works. The industry is a very spontaneous, very fast paced. You meet people naturally and organically, and when there's an opportunity, you want to be there. So if you leave because, oh, my boyfriend wants me to be home by a certain time, well then it's not the right industry for you, which is fine. But the point is, I know who I am, right? I am a free spirit. I am creative. I am spontaneous, but I lost a big part of who I was
Mm,
because of the relationships that I was trying to fit into. And that's my fault, because there are other women who don't do that, who don't compromise, and they have made it. So it's my fault. So I'm not crying over spilt milk, but it was a realization that I was like, wow, I was that girl. I can't believe I was so confident enough to pursue such a, this kind of industry. I had the confidence, I had the backbone, but then it just went away. What happened? So
mm,
that can happen, and I had to do a lot of deep reflection, and that's part of the reason why I wrote the book. Because I'm like, we really do, and then the advice I was getting, even from friends, like, I know they care about me, I know they love me, but some of them weren't in my shoes. They weren't pursuing what I was pursuing. So the advice that they were giving me, it was fine, but it was not for me.
mhm.
You know what I mean?
And that certainly happens, right? Because nobody is in your shoes.
Right.
Nobody lives your life and your experience and has your perspective, even if you have similarities, and particularly I think when you're a free spirit, when you're someone who just moves in the whim of how you move, it's hard to get advice that ever fully aligns with
Hmm.
you and your soul, because your soul is constantly evolving and very few people are in that space to understand how that moves and that adjusts so quickly.
Right.
um, so I know I appreciate that. So if we're reading your book, let's go to the book, right? I want to know some of the core pieces when you say more than one soulmate.
Hmm.
And you mentioned, right, is that soulmates are, it could be temporary, it comes for a lesson, but what are some like core big lessons that you feel like people can walk away with understanding better that this is the guide for them?
There's so many. I think, well, what stands out to me the most is a soulmate should be your best friend. Um, Now, in the book, I have four different guys that I wrote about, four different relationships. And there was one in particular who was my best friend. And regardless of us having a romantic interaction, I also saw him as like a brother. It was weird. And he saw me as a sister too. It was weird. We would laugh and have pillow talk about it. Cause he'd be like, I'm attracted to you. Like, like obviously like we're, intimate. But he's like, but you're also like a sister to me. And it's kind of weird because we were like best friends, And I think that's very important. But a lot of things happened, and one of the takeaways too is that like we're living in times that is very chaotic. It can be very polarizing, and there are some people that have good relationships. Like he was like my best friend, and I still we made up, so everything is cool. We don't have any like friction or anything like that. But there was a time where we stopped speaking because of things that had nothing to do with our relationship, but it had to do with outside forces, like things happening in the world. And, it's happening a lot now where people try to have a conversation, like let's say it's political or religious or, things that are happening in the news. And if people are very sensitive. So if you have an opinion and it slightly sounds like it's different from what the other person's opinion is, before you even get a chance to finish your sentence, they might just cut you off with assuming they know what you really mean. And then it's like, and then this argument becomes worse, and then you can end up losing a friend or whatever. And that happened
Mhm.
to us. He was one of my best friends, and then things happened that had nothing to do with us. It was like outside stuff, and we stopped speaking for almost a year. And I remember my father told me, he goes, don't worry, he'll be back, you guys been friends forever, and I go, no dad, you don't understand, he hates me, right? And my father was right. A year later he came back into my life. We picked it up where we left off. We made up, and he was there for me. And so the thing is, with a soulmate, you could break up with them. Like I said, it could be a season. Maybe they're not supposed to be your husband or wife or whatever. Things can happen where you go your separate ways. But when it's really a soulmate, it's like they circle back around, because until your purpose has been fulfilled, they're going to keep coming back around. And even if they don't, and let's say you do go your separate ways, there's this fondness of that was a soulmate, and so the relationship seeps deeper. It's not like some casual encounter that you can just forget about. It's a person that no matter what happened, for good or bad, you're like, but I love that person. That's why they're a soulmate. So even if it didn't work out, like the love, it's still love. You know what I mean? You still wish them well, basically.
Yeah, no, and I mean, that core piece of being a best friend is so huge.
Yeah.
And I think and that really goes to the fact of, again, going back to timelines, and I think often when we go to those timelines and we go to these expectations, we don't choose our best friends. We
Mm.
choose people who check off lists.
Mm. Oof.
Um,
Right.
and when you are looking for someone who truly speaks to your soul, you're looking for that safety, that trust, that ability to be vulnerable, right? Like that's best friend. Best friend is someone you can fully be your authentic self with, the messiness, the silliness, the goofiness, like all of it, and it's accepted, right? And that is so powerful in connection and in love. Um, and so, I mean, I love that. Are there any other really big pieces that particularly were your unlearning of love that you learned differently in writing the book?
I think abandonment is a big thing. Now, some people are afraid of abandonment, so they'll create it even though it's not going to happen. Like they're afraid. But then some people actually are abandoned, like they get discarded. That's where narcissism comes in. Like um, some men and women, some people can just discard you, and you're like, that's something that, and they may still come back around too, right? Like a
Yeah.
year later or something, they ghost you, and then a year later or something, they come back
Yeah.
around, and you're like, hey, you disappeared without saying anything. You can't just pop back up. It happens. But it's something that you learn when you love yourself. That is something you won't tolerate. Like you may forgive the person for being human and that was their way or style of communicating. They ran away, maybe they were afraid of the responsibility of the commitment, they didn't know how to have a conversation. There's so many different reasons why they may have decided to just discard or ghost. But it's not something that you would accept, you know what I mean? So as you learn to love yourself more, you're like, okay, if I know that that's how that person is, that they're capable of just discarding, it's one of these things where um because it kind of goes back to like the first guy, right? The one that was physically abusive, where I accepted the verbal abuse and then it became physical.
Mm,
Being ghosted and discarded is a different uh, area of abuse, but it is neglect, it is abusive. And the more you love yourself, the less you tolerate, and you start to, I heard this, someone say this, and I feel like it's very true. The more healed you become, the less attracted you are to unhealed people.
mm,
So, but while you're healing, you're gonna still attract some unhealed people, and that's okay, because you have to go through those lessons. You have to go through the experience of going, enough is enough, right? And so it's really okay, and I do say this in the book, it's really, really okay to be single. There is nothing wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're damaged. And I hate that people say that, especially to women. Like, if you're single by a certain age, what's wrong with you? It's so, to me, that is abusive. They may not realize it is, and they're not intentionally trying to abuse you. But when you tell someone, oh, there must be something wrong with you because you're single, that's
mm,
actually abusive. You should not buy into that lie. If you choose to be single by choice, whether you choose to be that way until older age, or it's just a season, maybe you want to be single for a year and you say to yourself, I don't want to date for a whole year. I'm just gonna, and maybe it'll be 2 years. Who knows? I don't want to date. I just intentionally don't feel like dating. What is
mhm.
wrong with that? That was one of the best things I ever did, was saying, it's not that I'm afraid to be in a relationship, but I love myself and I just don't want to share my space with anyone right now. I think that I'm good. So I think that's positive. I don't think that's unhealthy. I don't know why people say that. There's nothing wrong with, you
No,
know,
I mean, I think it's part of, to your point, right? It's the self-love piece, right? Like it's the self-love and the discovery and understanding. And it's funny because I literally did a post today on Substack, which, by the way, please follow both of us on Substack. Jasmine is big on Substack, so you got to go follow her. She's got a show on there. She does lives on there. I got an opportunity to be on one recently, and there's more coming up. And she is a prolific writer who talks about all of these different things. So please make sure you go follow her there, and so many other places, which we're going to talk about later. But I think, I wrote about just this idea of the winter, right? And how cold it is, but it's beautiful from the outside. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to look at the snow. It's beautiful, but like as soon as you walk outside in this weather, it's bitter and it's
mm,
cold and it hurts.
mm,
And I think at some point you start to realize that about love, when you've been hurt over and over again. And I mean, I talk about it, right? Is this idea is like you don't trust it anymore.
Mm.
I wanna see it from afar, but I don't wanna be in it, and that is healing, that is the part of healing, and I'm sitting there right now, you know, but it is that idea that we have to keep being okay with that, like, we're okay with sitting with ourselves, and that is part of also the self-love piece is being okay with sitting by ourselves. Because I think a lot of times we aren't. Like,
Right.
to your point, we buy into the narrative that we have to be with someone, we have to be in relationships, but it's also kind of reinforced with our fear of abandonment, almost in like we're fearful of
Ending up
like
alone.
ending up alone, but I think we're fearful of ourselves. Like we don't know ourselves and we're fearful of the silence that happens
Mm.
when you are alone
Mm.
because then you have to really dig into yourself. I mean, did you discover that? Because I know you've taken trips and you've gone places and you've been alone. And I think traveling solo is the best way to learn about yourself. I've started it after my divorce, and I mean, it has transformed the way I move through the world and my freedom and liberation. But tell me, for you, like, what what did you have to work through
Mhm.
in that aloneness?
Mm. Um, Part of it was what I accepted from men. So, like I said, if they were verbally abusive, I accepted that. Attention too. I had to really step into myself. Like when I did some shadow work, I had to dig into like, okay, for example, I was an artist, right? Well, I still am an artist, but I was like really doing my thing. And I did it because I loved music. But
Mm,
you get a lot of attention, even though you don't start out that way, right? You start out by, I love singing, I love the music, I love being creative, I love giving people something that is very positive through my song lyrics or videos and stuff like that. But because you get a lot of attention, because you are in the spotlight, you can become spoiled by that. And so now when you're dating, if I'm dating a guy who's giving me a lot of attention, I can
mm,
kind of fall for that, right? So I had to realize I had that part of the hiatus was really good for me because I had to kind of check myself and go, wait a second. First of all, I have to make sure that I don't become a narcissist, right? Because I can have narcissistic traits. I mean, you're in the industry is full of narcissists. And it's celebrated in the industry because it is about being number one and being the best and it's very competitive. You want to have the best outfit on, you want to look the best on camera so you get the most attention.
mhm,
You want to have the best song, you want to work with the best person, and it's about name dropping and, oh well, I work with so and so. And then you lose the fact that, whether someone is very, very popular or not, maybe you can become popular together because you're both really, really creative, but it's more about name dropping. So I had to check myself and really go, do I have narcissistic traits? Am I accepting some of what these men are giving me, even if it's breadcrumbs or this or that? Because when they love bomb me, I'm like, oh well, they like me so much now. And so I had to do um my own self-examination for a lot of different things. And I'm going to be honest, when you travel by yourself or when you are home by yourself and you're writing a lot, and it's a very isolating kind of craft, right? When you're writing, it's easy, right? It's because you're not dealing with someone else. So that's like the
mhm,
easy stage of healing. The real healing actually happens when you are around other people or you do start dating again, because that's when your boundaries are tested. And that's when you realize, are my boundaries still weak or are they still strong? Am I still easily manipulated or can I see clearly? Do I love all this attention or can I just be like, I don't care how much, I don't care if he calls me 100 times. I really don't give a shit. So the real work happens when you are with someone else because
mhm,
they show you more of what you're willing to accept and not accept. And also, how you give. Like I had to be open. Let me tell you, even though you date a person who may be, let's say, damaged or abusive, that doesn't mean that everything that person says is false. That's another thing. And that's not only that's not just being humble, but that's really being able to step out of yourself and be really aware. Because remember, you chose that person for a reason. The universe put that person in your life for a reason. And so, even though it may be harsh, you have to be able to discern between the weeds and know when they're saying something that they
mhm,
just want to get under your skin, they just want to get a reaction, they just want to chip at your self esteem. But sometimes they might actually say something that is true And it's a hard pill to swallow, but we're not perfect either. So I had to go through that too, where I'm like, could some of what he said have been true? So, and it's okay. It's a part of healing is also looking at the parts of yourself that may be ugly, right?
Mhm.
Damn,
Mhm.
that's the ugly part that I have. You know what I mean? And then be aware
Yeah.
of it, maybe change it, or maybe accept it. Maybe it is an ugly part of you that you're like, well, that's an ugly part of me, but I do that.
And that acceptance is big though. No, but I love that, and I think I appreciate that. I wrote a post about that idea, right? Like, is that we learn in our relationships really, and we're able to face ourselves differently when someone else puts the mirror up to you. Whatever relationship, because I think for me, a lot of the relationship I write about is my children.
Mm,
And that relationship, because that's a dynamic too of love and self-love and boundaries and all the things, right? But that's so important, is to see our own faults. And I'm wondering, like, when you're in those relationships, because there's something about that for me, I actually appreciate that because
right.
I want to grow. So
Mm.
when I'm with a man who actually will say something to me that gets me to be like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I do that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't be doing that. And that actually, like, it's my default, but my default doesn't make it the right thing, right?
Right.
Do you feel that there is, um, to that point of almost best friend, right? Like, is there something that's an opportunity of more depth in a relationship with someone when there is an ability to, one, accept those
Mm-hmm.
things with openness about ourselves, but also to have someone who's willing to say them with grace. Let's
Right. Right.
caveat there, with grace, kindness, and gentleness.
Mm.
They can tell you the things you need to know about yourself.
I love that. I think I really like that. That sounds juicy. I don't I don't think I've had that yet, but what I do want to say is, and I've learned this because I've been in a couple of bad relationships. I think time is the best revealer. So if you do have someone who is gentle, like you said, graceful and gentle, and they give you the truth, but in a respectful way, I think give it time, because abusers or narcissists are really good at putting on a persona in the beginning and pretending to be gentle and all those things.
Mm, mm.
And you can have that like for the first 3 months or even 6 months and go, oh my God, I'm telling you, it happened to me. And then once you're really in it, right? Like in it, and they know they got you, like the mask falls off and you start to see a different version of them. And that's why that can be very it's like a mind trip, because you go, is this the same person? Like, and so you stay because who you were with for the first few months, you believe that was them. And so now that they're showing you a different side, you're like, right? It's weird. So I would say, and again, I
So you
told
would start questioning yourself, like, you're like, "Oh, no, I probably am seeing this wrong," right? Because they were this great person this whole time.
yeah, and that's why I mentioned to you before about Dr. Ramani. You got to look her up. She's like the winning expert on narcissism. She's really good. She knows her stuff. She also encourages women or people in general to take their time in relationships, because a lot of things don't come out until later on. So she's like, don't rush. One of the biggest red flags is you think everything is so good in the beginning. It's like the honeymoon stage. It could be 3 months, 6 months, whatever. Or even 8 months, or the honeymoon stage is for some people it's even 2 years, right? So she really encourages taking your time. She's like, there's nothing wrong with taking your time, because if it is the right person, they're going to be around forever anyway, right? So there's no reason to
Mm,
rush. And she's like,
that's
and a
true.
lot of people, because they're excited, they rush. Now from a spiritual perspective, right, there's if a person is in alignment, then yeah, things can happen overnight. That is true. People can actually meet a healthy person and get married overnight and have a beautiful, healthy relationship. That is very, very possible. It does happen, but because there are unfortunately people that are abusive and deceptive, I agree with Dr. Ramani that it's okay to take your time, because even if that person who is in alignment, who is sent from, let's say, God, and you could marry them within 6 months, and it probably would be like the romance of a lifetime, and they do exist. That person, if they're really the one, if you push it back and you wait, you take your time, they'll still be that same person. So I do agree with her that, hey, there's nothing wrong with saying, I want to
Mm.
be a little bit more cautious.
Well, and does it also come back to you knowing yourself and your own patterns? And if you know that your pattern has been to fall for things that haven't been healthy, then giving yourself time to ensure that you, to your point, like get to practice that learning and growth in the relationship before fully committing to that relationship, because you know you've then healed and you've found someone who is healed enough that they this is a there's growth potential here, right? This is not harm, but this is something that's going to continue healing each other.
Exactly. You just said it. I don't have to say anything else. You're
No,
right.
but I love that. And I appreciate that. I mean, but like I think that this has been such a good conversation, and I really appreciate it. Please make sure you go and get More Than One Soulmate as the book. That is, it's such a good read, and it is giving us so many tools to again just expand our understanding of the of what we talk about when we talk about love, when we talk about self love, when we talk about just the love that we connect with others. But I want to shift a little bit because one of the posts that I did before this show for to promote was you speaking on a recent podcast that you did on your spiritual goodness, and you talk about this connection between some of the things happening in humanity right now. And recently, I heard this idea that during the Great Depression,
Mm,
the Harlem Renaissance was born, right? So
mm.
history shows us that often in moments of rupture, right, when humanity feels like we're at risk, like we are just not sure what can happen and what is possible, creatives start to step forward. So um, when you think about this, do you see some kind of a spiritual connection to the way art is rising during these moments of crisis? Because you've been talking about it a lot on your podcast and your writing. Again, follow her on Substack. She posts a lot of stuff. And Instagram and everywhere else because it makes you think. And this was making me think quite a bit. But when you think about that, like what is that spiritual connection to art and those moments of disillusionment and crisis?
I love how you frame the questions. They're beautiful. I'm going to go back to that quote that I said before because it's so true. At every level, there's a new devil. I really feel that way because, I think that as we evolve and things get better and better, it's like then something happens, whether you want to call it a real devil or not. I mean, we don't have to get religious, but there's opposing forces, right? There's polarizing
Mhm.
forces. There's light and darkness, and there's opposites, right? Even if you think back to the Hermetic principles, there's 7 laws. There's more than that, but one of the laws that we all hear about is the law of attraction. And a lot of people say, well, the law of attraction didn't work for me. Well, because there's 7 laws. It's not just one. So they're all working together. And one of those laws in the 7 hermetic principles is the law of opposites, right? So in this world, on this planet Earth, there are opposites. So I think what's happening is that things will get really good. Like we're evolving, not perfect because nothing is perfect, but we're getting better and better and we're evolving. And then the opposite, something negative comes and goes, no, you're not going to be perfect. We're going to mess things up. And then it shakes things up and it rattles things up and it becomes chaotic, but light is still there. So those sparks of light still want to come out. And if you can think of, there's this Japanese kind of quote, or I don't know if it's a quote or more like a cultural tradition or something like that, but it's a cup, right, that breaks.
Yeah.
And then what happens is they paint gold inside of the cracks,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
it's beautiful, right? And I think that's what's happening. It's like something, an opposite effect comes that's like negative, and it tries to destroy the light that's been evolving, and it goes like that. And then because we're made of light, everyone has light in us, the light starts to go, we're gonna make a comeback. And so we become creative and artsy, and we think of all these different unique ways of trying to get the light to come back out, because that's, to me, that's what art is. Art is light expressing itself, and it expresses itself in so many different ways, whether it's through film or scripts or songs or music videos or commercials and fashion and all these things. But it's the human soul expressing itself. It's light coming through our vessel and saying, see me, see the light, and let's advance each other through these creative endeavors and these projects. That to me is what it is. So that's why I feel the light is being born during these crazy times, because you can't kill light.
That is beautiful. I love the way you laid that out, right? You can't kill light,
Thank
and
you.
light is coming through. It's always there.
Mhm.
And I think we forget that. And it's easy to forget when you're inundated with darkness, when you're inundated with what feels like there's no point of return, there's nothing there to hold on to, there's nothing to grasp, to change, and exhaustion takes over. So what we're saying, and you're saying, right, is that light is our way of pushing through that exhaustion, because it can start small, right?
Mhm.
Art and expression doesn't have to be massive and grand. You don't have to be a whole musician in, like, in the industry. You can start with small things, and I love that about the environment that we're in Substack, particularly. I would say I feel that is a beautiful place. If nobody's ever been there, go and visit Substack. Go and start being a part of it. It is light. It is truly these little pieces of light that come, and remind you of the beauty of people and the beauty of humanity. And such a different kind of social media space than any place we're in right now, for certain. So I absolutely love that. Speaking of Substack, speaking of all the things, where do people go to find you, Jasmine?
So on Substack, it's substack.com/Jasmine Clemente, but you can go on my website. My website is jasmineclemente.com. And for those who may be wondering, yes, my last name is Clemente, and I am related to Roberto Clemente. I don't really talk about it that much because it's my third cousin, so it's third generation. But some people know who he was. He was a famous baseball player that died a humanitarian. So he's actually very a lot of people in the Latino community know who he was, and I am very honored that he's in my family tree. Um, I have some things coming down the pipeline with my next book that is mentioning his name as well. Um,
Logic says, what about Rosa Clemente?
I don't know who that is, but I'm
Who
related
is
to
Rosa
Roberto
Clemente?
Clemente. So he died, obviously, and I don't know all the, like, my grandfather basically is his first cousin. So if
Wow.
Clemente was alive right now, he'd be the same age as my grandfather. Now, I haven't met, like, I still haven't met his son, actually. I've talked to him online, but I haven't met him in person yet. But that's something that I have coming down in the works. What I could tell you is that as far as the Clementes, we're very, very close. So if you haven't even met a certain person in the family, but you make a phone call and you say, hey, I want to see you because I need to talk to you about something or whatever, they'll make it happen, because as long as you're a Clementi and you're in that bloodline, like, we do it. So it's a very, my father's family is like that. Yeah, it's very, so, and it's a beautiful, beautiful bloodline. But in any case, you can go on jasmineclemente.com and you can see my Instagram is there, Facebook. I'm on everything really, TikTok, Insight Timer as well. Insight Timer is not so much as a social media site. It's more of like for wellness professionals. So I teach yoga on there and meditation. And I also have some audio meditations that are pre-recorded that you can listen to. And I have some online courses and stuff. So Insight Timer. But if you go on my website, jasmineclemente.com, everything is on there. So all my sites are on there.
And the website is linked below, so please make sure you go and check it out for certain. And so many things. I love that because I can't imagine. I can only imagine how soothing your voice is on Insight Timer.
I'll find out. Like, I can find out who Rosa Clemente is, because if she's in my family, I could just make a call and go, "Who's Rosa?" And they'll put, so who, I don't know who said, "Do you know who Rosa is?" But if she's related to me, I'm sure I'll. Rosa Clemente ran for VP the first time, but I don't know if
Oh.
I'll find out. I will ask my, relatives and be like, "Who's Rosa? Is she related to us or not?" I'll find out. But I am, because the Clemente family is huge. It's really, really big. But yes, my
Well,
grand.
I love that because honestly, I was just thinking Clemente is a common last name, so I wouldn't have made that connection. But
That's why
I
I'm
mean,
not
that's
sure if
pretty.
Rosa is part of my family or not. She could be, maybe, maybe not.
Right, right.
There's a lot of Clementes. But
But
yeah, as
just
far
that
as,
Roberto Clemente is pretty, that's pretty impressive, for certain. So that's neat. I love that. Thank you so much, Jasmine. Thank you for sharing your story, your connections, your information, your wisdom. So many nuggets that we're walking away with. And salute to all the Clementes. Yes. Thank you to our chat for joining in. For if you sat here through our broadcast and our live and you watched, hopefully you took away something. Please make sure you leave a comment. Leave a comment, friends. I can't say it enough. Leave a comment, leave a comment, leave a comment. They help us out. They help us in the algorithm. You've got Jasmine Station on YouTube here. You've got me on YouTube, the Ranters Union, the iRant Network. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, and make sure that you're always tuning in to Pain to Power. So as we're sitting in this moment, personally and collectively, what we know is healing is not just about our individual act anymore, but it's actually relational. It's connecting. It's knowing ourselves in order to overflow and give to others, right? I love that. Um, and if you are right now feeling disconnected or overwhelmed or tired, please make sure this is really that invitation to come back to what grounds you, to your art, to your creativity, to being the light, and to continue to heal and join Jasmine and me in our work in all the places. I am Brown Girl Interrupting. I am on Substack and Facebook and TikTok, and I am writing. In fact, I just wrote a piece about my that connects back in my series of Return, which is coming home to self-love. Very similar again to Jasmine in our work. There's a lot of alignment there, which is why this is the moment, right? Everything happens for a reason. And the new piece is called, it's all about the fourth stage of the Return series, which is unlearning. And it's called If I Want a Man Who Drives, I Have to Stop Opening the Car Door. So it is my learning and my self-analysis and thinking about what are some of the things I need to recognize about my own behaviors and patterns, my own expectations. So that self-love journey is constant. It is continuous. It is an evolution. I implore you to explore it, but I also implore you to continue to find places and ways to guide yourself to understanding fully and knowing who you are so that your overflow can give to others. And with that, I want to say that I have started my courses, Empowerment Unlocked. And as a special thing, I started last Thursday and second session is this Thursday, but I am opening up because if you want to be on this journey with me, come and join this course. I will catch you up in no time this week so that you can be in the second session. And here is a quick advertisement that tells you a little bit more about the course and what it is all about. Yeah. I used to think that being a good mother meant I had it all and did it all. Never show any weakness, always holding it together. But what I've learned through the experience of raising 4 children through divorce, transitions, and growth is that the real strength is in my mindset shifts. It's letting go of the story that I have to be everything to everyone and starting to ask, what do I need to do to come home to myself? Those are the kind of shifts we're going to make together in Empowerment Unlocked, because when we change our story, we change our outcome.
I had the pleasure of attending the Empowerment Unlocked series with Maria. One of the things that Maria did is she was able to create this safe space where I was able to be very thoughtful and vulnerable. And one of the things that I looked forward to was the very supportive sisterhood that was kind of created each week.
What I found most valuable about this empowerment course was the way it created space for deep and honest reflection without any pressure whatsoever to perform or to fix anything and everything by the end of the course. And I could tell that much care went into it, but the care in how the material was held and delivered, it was grounded and respectful. It felt very thoughtful, very intentional, and again, genuinely supportive.
So join me to start your sessions. The link is in my bio. And follow me on Brown Girl Interrupting on Substack, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. So please make sure to come and join me in Empowerment Unlocked. The session is still open for new registration. It is $49. I will catch you up with the first week and get you to exactly where you need to be. And I know we talk about sisterhood, but it is humanhood. We have men, we have women, and it is open to anyone who is ready to start unpacking those patterns of socialization, those patterns that hold us back from truly knowing ourselves and remembering who we are and our power. So just like the work that Jasmine is doing, I'm doing this work as well. Follow us both. Hopefully, Jasmine, there's someone you know who might want to join. And just keep coming, keep showing up. This is Pain to Power every week. Every week, we turn our struggles into strength. And every week at 8 p.m. on YouTube and on the iRant Network and on Renters Union and on LinkedIn and on Facebook, we are learning how to heal in community because that is what we all need right now. Thank you again, Jasmine. Thank you to my amazing producer, Ja Logic, Mr. M. And thanks to Victoria Stocosta, who connected us because we are here for a reason.